Hey y'all. Today was a good day. I had a conversation with a very good friend of mine, Vinny Tafuro, of Unlocking the Labor Cage. You can follow Vinny on Facebook, Vinny Tafuro, and then you can. He's actually giving away his book, Unlocking the Labor Cage, a little chunk at a time. If you follow him on Facebook, he's actually publishing it on Facebook. So you want to check that out. And we had a conversation about what's going on here in the Tampa Bay area and what's going on in the nation as it concerns coronavirus, as it concerns the reaction to it, both at a governmental level and a social, political level. It's good conversation, and it's basically just Vinny and I talking. You guys get to sort of hop in there and and sort of be a fly on the wall to one of our conversations because this is how he and I talk. So it is truly a blessing to know someone like this and have access to someone like this who wants to have a conversation with me. So I wanted to share that with you. Vinny said it was cool to share, so I'm sharing it. And attached to this video is also a short video from a doctor who was involved in USF Health. The messaging of all of these things that we're hearing from politicians and federal people. What we've not heard is a level-headed, honest, open, transparent anything, especially from the medical community. So this clip that's going to follow Vinny and I's conversation is only about 10 minutes, and it's really, really important that if you live in this area that you do. You might even want to fast forward past our conversation to get to it. It's like 10 minutes. It'll be at the very end. Again, it's one of the doctors from USF Health. Thank you ever so much for tuning in. Thanks for watching. Thanks for supporting us. Thanks for doing what you're supposed to do. Thanks for thinking ahead. Thanks for watching out for the Republic. I hope you enjoy the conversation.
It's just the rollout of all of this and the lack of information, the culture around it is just really gnawing at me at a deep level. Um, the
What's the
flatten
worst?
the what?
What's the worst part?
The worst part is this idea that's been generated that flattening the curve somehow meant avoiding infection completely forever. Flattening the curve was to make sure we didn't overwhelm our healthcare system and have to make decisions like this person won't live and this person gets care. And so far, not one American in this country has had that choice. Now, well, I'll take that back. I've heard that somebody did die in a hallway in Detroit at a hospital. I am sure there are stories that are going to come of people that did not get care that should have in some capacity. But here in Hillsborough County, um, that is not the case. We are not overwhelmed. We are not widespread. And my thought at this point is, how do we figure, and I don't know how to do it, but how do we figure out where that sweet spot is where we have people locked down, but we still have infections? And then there's, the longer we can go without infections, the more possibility there are for other treatments, and we learn more about the illness. Like in New York, we're learning ventilators may not have been the best choice.
So
Um,
maybe 40 screaming for 40,000 of them may have not been the thing you should have been doing.
yeah. But then, on the other side, no, there's something to be said about us being separated and staying at home and the safer at home. I was on board with that. But not this, not a curfew. And we're only two of 67 counties. Why?
Well, it's interesting. I listened to a little bit of what was said, and I listened to who said it. It was interesting that Les Miller. Now, I live in Les's district,
Yeah.
which is more than he does, but that's beside the point. And I was, I was going. I don't know what was I going to do. I was going to pay the mortgage. That's what I was going to do, because that's an essential thing because we have to live indoors at this point. So you have to have an indoors to live in. So, um, and I was going down. Well, I was going. down 40th Street and I looked down one of the side street, Osborne, one of those streets, and it seemed like somebody was, I don't know, had like a, a fruit stand or food stand, and there were people and there were people friggin' everywhere. And I
Yeah.
thought, well, I guess not everybody is practicing the social distancing that they should be practicing, I guess.
Yeah.
And this was like the day that the narrative turned to Black folks better get ready because Black folks are really suffering with this, because that sort of half narrative, that if you do it in a halfway sense, it seems like somehow coronavirus, COVID-19, Hong Kong flu, whatever you're calling it nowadays, is attacking Black people, disproportionately, as opposed to Black people because of how we live, according to the Surgeon General and according to my mother and according to my wife, gives us all those comorbidities that don't give us great outcomes.
Yeah.
We suffer with hypertension, and we suffer with heart disease, and we suffer with being overweight, and we suffer with diabetes. Not me, but you, the white guy.
I have type 1 though. That's totally different
Yeah,
in so many ways.
but you know what I'm
Yeah.
saying. So of course we may not have, if we get those viruses, we may not have good outcomes.
Yeah.
But that wasn't the narrative. So
Yeah.
when Les Miller says we're going to invoke this curfew because our health system might be overwhelmed, I'm sorry, you know me. I go, might be overwhelmed. Are we
Yeah.
close? Is there evidence of that?
Yeah.
You
I
don't.
want numbers.
We don't live in the 60s where you can just put the headline in the daily news and everybody goes, okay, then I guess we're almost overwhelmed. No, we live in 2020. You got to give me more than that. You got to give me more than anecdotal evidence. You got to give me some numbers. You got to, TGH is right down there. Somebody get down there with an abacus and count people. This is not difficult to do.
Yeah.
And of course, all of us know somebody who works there. I have a student who works there, who actually is playing clarinet, who's coming home, an adult nurse, charge nurse, who's coming home in the afternoon and practicing clarinet and is killing it.
Oh yeah.
She is absolutely killing it. I'll work with her today, and we'll work on the second movement of the Mozart clarinet concerto, and she is smoking it. And I asked, "How are things at work?" And she said, "It's okay. It's busy."
Yeah.
She's not coming home distraught like you see people on television. She's not. She's like, yeah, it's busy.
Yeah.
I said, do you have any COVID patients on your floor? No.
Yeah.
She said the best part about it, she lives downtown. The best part about it is that people aren't going to that gym, and she lives above that gym, and in one of those places.
Yeah.
She said parking is cool. Parking is nice now. It's the best part.
Yeah, I think DOT is going to have a problem justifying expanding roads if we can just work from home.
I don't know. There was a county commission candidate a few years ago who suggested that that's what we ought to turn to as, I don't know. There was a guy. He didn't qualify. So I thought that District 3 might be a hotbed for that sort of innovation and activity. Oh, well, anyway.
It didn't catch on, did it?
Didn't catch on. Not at all. Not at all. To
Yeah.
solve a bunch of those road problems and pollution problems and those and climate and climate change problems, if we could just, I don't know, build up our infrastructure to where more and more people could work from the house.
Yeah.
Anyway,
I think what's funny is I was talking to a friend yesterday, and I was in the middle of writing an article before all this happened, and that's kind of been put on hold because I'm writing some other stuff, but there's still it's all involved. We complain about young people being entitled to want to have purpose and want autonomy over their careers. Well, the thing is like, if you go to college, you pick and choose your classes, you work mostly from home, your dorm room. You agree with your boss, your professor, on what the milestones and accountability metrics are going to be. And if you deliver, you get an A. If you don't, you get a lower grade. So right now we've got a bunch of students that are distance learning at home, and they have more autonomy for their schedule than their parents do. So
It's
I'm
true.
curious, this culture is going to be interesting where the college students are going, Mom, why do you have to be logged into your computer for 8 hours? Oh, because that's what my boss tells me to do to get a paycheck. Well, how many hours do you need to finish the work you're supposed to do today? Oh, probably 3 or 4. So wait, you mean you could be working less hours remotely and get more work done? Oh, well, maybe the work environment needs to change then, not the college students themselves.
I think I think you're absolutely right. But it is interesting on how we're going. My thoughts are, what are we going to look like post this? Because there will be a post this. I think that when you're reading the newspaper or you're watching the news all the time, you don't think that there's going to be a post anything, that this is, we're going to be stuck in this
This
forever.
is it forever.
I mean, this is like an episode of the Twilight Zone,
All
where
of the Roman Empire lasted forever.
yes, exactly. What are we going to look like, especially here in the Tampa Bay area? What are we going to look like economically? Because that's your deal. Look at there with the Unlocking the Labor Cage book. That folks is available if you follow Vinny Tafuro on his Facebook page, because Vinny is feeling fabulously gracious and is basically giving it away.
Yep.
All you have to do is go and read a chunk every day, and you don't have to read the whole thing. He's just giving you a little chunk to read every day.
How are you liking that?
Yeah, that's cool, man. That's a
Yeah,
great
cool.
idea. That's a cool
Nobody's
idea.
made any comments on it, but I've got plenty of views and likes. And I had a friend of mine who was like, I don't know what to say.
Like nothing. I was just saying, I told y'all, tried to tell y'all, but you weren't listening.
Mm-hmm.
You weren't listening.
Yeah, it's funny. I have a couple of friends that have reached out to me over the last couple of weeks. They're like, "You're probably pretty excited about this," and I'm like, "Yeah, maybe."
Well,
I didn't want the event to be a pandemic, though. I really, like I said, I thought it would be the 2012 like election cycle. I thought it would be, a whole bunch of other things in the last 8 years that I've been talking about. The economy needs to change how we measure value.
yes, yes.
you know, because right now you can't call the out of work people lazy. There, that doesn't hold water. There are a lot of people that want to work, that were working. We had a robust, healthy economy, but we don't know how to value people, um, and it's not long term. Like I said, I'm okay with the Keynesian injection of capital in an emergency, but that can't be our long term solution to it because it's not viable. Um, you know,
What's the long term? What's a long term solution? Because we're gonna have to start. We're gonna we're gonna have to hit a reset button,
mm-hmm.
and that reset button can't go back to way to. I'm not even using the phrase. I can't wait till things get back to normal.
Yeah.
I don't like the phrase for a whole bunch of reasons, and I really don't think that getting back to that place,
Is the
judging
best.
where we are now, is the best thing.
Yeah.
Um, and on all sorts of levels, politically, economically, every, spiritually, on every level, getting
On
back to
every level.
where you were before, because where we were before leads to this.
Yeah. We
And
can't go backwards.
I don't want to keep going through that. I don't want to keep going through this cycle for the rest of my
No.
days. So,
We're
well,
calling it Groundhog Day for a reason. We don't want to do it again.
no one want to do it again.
No.
Exactly. So how do we go back? How do we go back in the Tampa Bay area specifically?
Yeah.
Once the button is hit to start again.
We have got to figure out how the philanthropic and tech sector and business sector wholly and fully funds early childhood education, kindergarten preparedness. That is I think the key thing, because if you invest, if we as a society and through the private sector, we shouldn't have to tax the local philanthropic community to get this money. But every child that is given an equitable start to their life will be more valuable to this community in 15 years. And unlike any other demographic along a lifespan, somebody under the age of 5 or 6 that hasn't reported for their first day of kindergarten yet has zero responsibility for this problem. And so, therefore, in a community, in a county of 1 million people and a Tampa Bay region of 3 million plus or whatever it is, um, how do we make sure we're the one area in the United States where if you're born in this community, you have a chance to go to kindergarten on peer with everybody else the same age as you? And we have the money to do it. We had one family, one person spend, was it 1 million or $8 million? How much did David Straz spend on his mayoral campaign?
$8 million.
8 million. We have enough money in this community where no child should be left out between 0 and pre-K.
I think
And
that
we
that
shouldn't have to raise taxes to do it because there's enough philanthropic giving to do it.
how do we, how do you convince and how do you convince that community that that's a good idea, not just for general purposes and an altruistic thing, but generally it's a good idea for them too, even again on a selfish basis, because this is the kind of society, this is the kind of community that if you invest this money in those children, this is the kind of society you're going to live in. These are the kind of resources and people that you're going to be able to need for your business, and this is how you are in a while, that long-term investment is going to pay off for you economically, financially.
They're going to go to school here. They're going to remain here. They're going to work here. They're going to start businesses here. They're going to start restaurants here. They're going to do their business here. They're going to invite people here. It's an all-around cycle. They're going to buy more condos in the Channel District. you know? Or when when we start repurposing some of the office towers that law firms decide they don't need so much space after everybody's working from home for 2 months. Like I know, the professional services community, and don't say it's not possible, because every cigar factory used to be filled to the brim with cigar rollers.
Yep.
And every office tower right now is filled with finance, bankers, and attorneys, all services that are completely able to be done from home.
Or
and even in some cases far more efficiently.
Well, at least not, taking up 6 stories of a 70-story building.
Exactly.
That's for sure.
Now something like Industrious or you have an office footprint because there's a certain amount of meetings and things like that in face-to-face, as long as we're still allowed to shake hands, will still be good. And there is space needed for that, but not the same capacity that we're doing now.
No, not these large edifices built so you can slap your name up there and run around like a prize goose.
But pre-K, kindergarten preparedness, early childhood, that is, I think, where we can focus money. It's nonpartisan. And like I said, you can't blame a 4-year-old for being too lazy.
What?
Like, if you're a certain age, it's the environment, not the child.
Yeah, I guess you can't hop down on a 4-year-old.
If you're born into this world, well, maybe by 4 you've been screwed up enough. But the point being is, between birth and 5 years old, there is no reason every child born in this community isn't offered an opportunity to succeed.
I think that's a super point, and we need to start again, once we get the go ahead to do so, really start asking people and explaining to people the benefit of just that. Now, here's something that in my world I really want to talk about. I want to talk about the balance of what we're doing and how we're doing it with protecting individual rights, because that's for me that's a sticking point. It bothers me, and correct me if you think I'm crazy, but I may be crazy. The idea is this: it seems to me that some people are just giddy almost to turn over their individual rights for some for some feeling of perceived safety,
Right.
almost in a sense that we deserve to be completely safe from everything. I always, I tell people all the time that the world is not milk safe.
No.
Nothing is safe. Even milk isn't safe. There's nothing that's safe. There's an inherent danger to taking a breath and walking a step. I mean, there's
Hmm.
an inherent danger in life to where you may be injured, where you may inhale or you may touch something and you may get sick. And I'm the guy who's had pneumonia to go to the hospital and struggle, for his life twice in the past 12 years. I get it.
Yeah.
And I think the last time, Vinny, I'm trying to remember back. I started feeling bad after I played some kid's flute,
Yeah.
and it damn near killed me. Uh,
Yep.
Life is dangerous, and so how do you balance the public good? And we have some public do-gooders, Mr. Miller and Mayor Castor and Mike Merrill, unelected bureaucrat. But anyway,
Yeah.
some of these other people with our individual freedoms and individual rights as stated in the Constitution of the United States and the Constitution of the State of Florida.
How do we do it?
Yeah,
We got it. Well,
I need you
yeah,
to answer so I can write this down and then I will submit it on Facebook.
that's all right. You got the recording. um, I would say, one benefit of this, regardless of what it's the politics and the rights and whatnot, is we are slowing down in a way that we haven't done. That's long overdue. People are learning what it's like to see their children learn at home. Like, there's a whole bunch of things that we're learning right now, and I think slowing down is one thing, because nobody has the time to listen to an emergency policy meeting of local government. So most people yesterday got the notice on their cell phone that there was a curfew, and no, nothing. You and I are hyper connected, and we're on Facebook and social media, and we knew. Actually, I forgot it was coming because I thought this was a dead issue when we went to Safer at Home. I didn't know it was going to come up yesterday, so it even caught me off guard. But I knew what we were talking about. Until we're able to slow down, and this is on the private sector. Until the private sector slows itself down enough to allow the population to digest what's coming at it, we're just going to continue to lose rights. We're going to continue to lose the ability to decipher what's real and what's not, what's impactful, what's not, what's important and what's not. So I think that's a problem. I think a lot of people, again, the messaging on this, it has been a complete disaster all along, and that's from the president all the way down to the Republican president, all the way to Democratic leadership in Hillsborough County and St. Pete and Tampa and Pinellas. All the way across the board, it's not working well. How do we fix that? I don't, that like I said, I think until we slow down enough where people can take the time and figure it out, that's I think a big problem. And then, like I said, on messaging, people believe that we're staying home to stop infections. And nobody is correcting this message right now. They're doubling down on it. The CDC's guidelines are still groups of 10 or more. Most people are not having gatherings of 10 or less, rather, are okay. So now you've got guidelines that are saying groups of 10 or less are avoid, but if you have to gather, you can gather in 10 or less, whatever it is. Like I said, it's all kind of ambiguous. We get it, like you reduce connections and you're going to reduce the infection rate. But what's happening now is people are talking about stopping infections. And that's the wrong message.
That even possible?
You can't. So
I got my last lung infection. There were two of us in the room.
yeah.
I picked up her flute and I played it, and I went. And 2 days later, I was like a little congested, and then 4 days later, I was in the hospital with the paddles on me. So,
and,
uh,
and the thing is, even our elected and our unelected officials are all, they may be getting their information from different sources than the general population, but not really. so Mike Merrill and Les Miller and the mayor are not really much more informed than we are.
My point.
Yeah, and they're they're adjusting to a new schedule. It took me a week or two, and I'm still not adjusted to this new environment. And our elected, are not adjusted yet either. They're still human beings that are coping, and so they're making decisions that may or may not be well thought out yet.
Well, I always, what it would seem to be if, and I know this phrase gets overused, if there were a more measured type of message that that someone could craft and say, hey, listen, um, what we're trying to do is make sure that as many people who are vulnerable are safe as possible. There won't be a time, because it's the nature of things, where we won't hear about people getting COVID-19. There won't be a time. There won't be a time that we won't hear about somebody getting Lyme disease.
Yeah.
Or SARS or MERS or anything else, because these things are now in our environment.
Yeah.
So if you're looking for that fix where we killed it, it's gone, I don't have to worry about it. That doesn't exist in nature. So that can't be the goal. It can't be the goal, because it's a goal that it's a snipe hunt. That goal is a snipe hunt because it's never going to happen.
Yeah.
Once something gets into the environment, it's in the environment, and it may it may go away or go underground for years and years and years. You may never hear about it, or it may pop up again in 6 weeks. It might.
Yeah.
Because life is dangerous. What we're going to try to do is make sure that in the meantime, that we keep as many people safe as possible, and we don't crap can anybody's life if we don't have to. My biggest concern is local governments, and actually federal government at this level, because this is coming, deeming something as essential or not, an activity or a corporation as essential or non-essential. It's my thought that government, federal or state or local, can do that inside the parameters of government. They can say that they have employees that are essential or non-essential. That's fine. What they can't do is say if somebody in the private sector's thing is essential or non-essential, or if there's a product that's being sold in a big box store that's essential or non-essential. We've all seen the pictures of
Walmart's and Target with aisles shut down.
Well, yeah, where the seeds are, where the seeds are for food are shut down as being non-essential.
Yeah.
It's not really government's place to make those decisions. Why do you think at this point local governments believe they have the right or the necessity to start making those decisions for people? Is it just quarantine Karen out there?
What?
Is it just quarantine Karen? People aren't doing enough.
Yeah. It's it's a lot.
Yes.
I think, I think right now it's like I'm too many messages, too many places, too much conflict on the messaging. There's no cohesive message, and people that are, I think there was too long of a delay in the beginning, and then now a snap towards too much. I was talking about Fauci the other day, and it's come out, he had made some commentary about, nobody should shake hands anymore. And, that's not a conversation. He may have an opinion on that, but as a professional that is supposed to balance public safety with also not, and having a sense of urgency, but not flaming panic, that's not something that needed to be said yet. It's irrelevant right now. It may be, in fact, the necessity that for 6 months after that, or in his mind for years after this, that we shouldn't shake hands because it's healthier. But it's kind of like, I think of things in age appropriateness. If he had that opinion, keep it to yourself for now, because it's not helpful today. what is the helpful, relevant information that we need today? You know, and like I said, the arbitrariness of what's essential and what's not essential is kind of ridiculous. Um, it started off, we need food. That's where it started, and then there's the what do we need on top of that, and then you start getting, well, we need electronics, we need this, we need, people are working from home, so you got to be able to buy a monitor. You're working from home, you got to be able to buy sanitizer. It's just kind of creeping out, and so now how do you start working that into a conversation about how do we open up again? How do we get to reality? Because as far as Florida, the order for closing bars and restaurants completely will hit 30 days on the 17th, I think, because it was St. Patrick's Day that we did it.
So are they looking forward to this major blowout down there where you live, where you know what, it's just gonna pop off, that it's gonna just pop off down there like crazy?
It's not, I'm not, I'm giving it at least another week. But no, I mean, if the government doesn't start coming up with something for easing out of this, I'm going to start easing myself out of it. And that's hey, CDC guidelines say 10 people. I'm having people over for dinner.
How can you can't perpetually lock down 327 million people. You just
No.
can't. It's just not possible. It's just not possible, and eventually people will start easing themselves out. And then and then what? What do you do, Les Miller? What do you do, Mayor Castor? What do you do, Sheriff Chronister, when people say, when individuals say, hey, you know what? There are 10 of us. The CDC guidelines, CDC, which is not a government organization, by the way, say 10. And wait a minute, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. And you seem, sir, the closest to me. Back up. Back up.
Yeah.
What happened? Because there will be a portion of the population who goes, that's what we're going to do. Like my church, like I didn't go to church on Easter because my wife wouldn't let me, because of all my past conditions. So she felt better that I stay home. So we stayed home. But my church is small. I mean, small, like 40 people. So what Pastor did was he divided us into 3 services where there's no more than 10 people in the room, and everybody, even though most of us got out of the same bed and drove in the same car, when we sit in the service, we are at least 6 to 8 feet apart.
And you know what?
We made it work.
There's a couple of mega churches that ruined it for everybody. I mean, that's quite frankly, I mean, the Catholic Church is one organization globally, is the biggest congregation you got in the Christian realm of gatherings, and the Pope has no problem with virtual services. So to have one-off mega churches go, we need to gather in person, and I don't know. I think there should be some voluntary willingness there to hold back, because you set an example that way. Whereas a congregation of 40 people that can break themselves up into X groups of 10, that's different. My own mother went to St. Paul's Church, and she was called to read the gospel stories. So she was one of the 10 people allowed in the church, so she could read the stories for all the parishioners that attended via web. Be smart. Don't be grandstanding with it. And I think that's, this conversation, again, is one of those conversations that got blown out of proportion, because there are some groups of Christian gatherings that are not quite in line with public health.
Well, and we all saw, because again, like you said earlier, we're all connected on Facebook and Twitter, and Twitter is a freaking dumpster fire. But anyway, it just is. It makes me angry every time I venture into that dumpster fire, and I'm angry at me. I should know better.
I'll give you my Twitter strategy later.
And we saw the church in Greenville, Mississippi, where people were meeting in their cars. And
Yeah.
I don't think there's a better mask than a car.
I mean, if this virus can survive that much carbon monoxide
We're
around the clock,
dead. We're all dead. We're just dead people. We are all dead men walking. If the virus can survive carbon monoxide and get
yeah.
through a plate glass window in a car, we are all dead men walking. But
Yeah, drive-in church, like I said, you're being novel about it. I don't know how big the congregation was. That's
I think in that particular instance, there weren't very many people. I think there were probably 20 cars in the parking lot. I do know that there are other larger churches, Relentless Church in South Carolina, that had, I don't know. 'Cause I watched their service on Friday on YouTube, and they probably had a couple of hundred cars in their parking lot.
yeah,
Uh, but everybody in the parking lot was watching on their phone or their tablet. They
yeah,
just wanted to be able to see each other and make sure that everybody was cool. That's all.
yeah.
As opposed to virtually, they actually wanted to be able to physically look out the window and see people to make sure that everybody was fine.
And
And
that,
if there was
like
a
I said, I
point,
get that.
and
That's
if
the
there was a
equivalent.
time that somebody actually needed something, food, supplies, or whatever, it was a chance to actually trade those things and take care of one another. Uh,
Yeah,
as opposed to going to some agency to get that done. They were able to do that inside their own congregation, and
yeah,
it worked better by actually meeting. Um,
yeah.
and it's not really meeting, but you all showed up in the same Walmart
But I
parking lot.
get it. The visual contact of seeing each other. That's the same reason why school teachers have done parades in their cars through neighborhoods to wave at the students to let
El-
them know they're still there and okay.
Elementary
Um,
school teachers.
what?
Elementary school teachers. High school teachers don't do that crap.
No, no,
That's an
they
elementary
get
thing.
eggs thrown at their cars. But but that so no, that visual element is important. And like I said, I think the entire conversation around religious services was hijacked by some very more of your kind of extreme right side of it, where there's this, we're going to do this against public outcry as opposed to do it to let people see each other. The gathering at what is it, not relevant,
The river.
the river, that was all about grandstanding and about attracting specific attention and trying to put up something that would be shut down. That was not about servicing parishioners. That was about how can we gain attention for Christ's mission and do battle with the government. Um, if it was in the best interest of the parishioners, it would have been low profile. It would have been handled more like your church. It would have been broken up into smaller groups over the course of 24 hours or whatever it was needed to not attract attention.
Well, I do, I've seen some churches that are like 150 people, and pastors worn out because they're having like 15 services a week.
Uh,
Pastors worn to a nub because they're having like 15 services a week,
I know.
which is probably something that a larger church should probably consider, because this whole idea, frankly, that you can go to church on Sunday and then behave like however you want to Monday through Saturday, is probably not the best idea. So you get people off their Sunday schedule, and now they're going in the building on Tuesday afternoon.
Yeah.
Maybe that's better for what you're trying to do. So, I mean,
Yeah.
there's always a way to do it,
Yeah.
and
And how much is money motivated as well to collect?
well,
Uh, you know,
there's a
I
reality
use
there.
what?
There is a reality
I mean,
when you have a building and people don't give you money for electricity. You have to earn the money for electricity. Some of these churches, I'm not saying the river does. I think the river's paid for. I think.
yeah, because they bought it from Auto Nation
Yes,
foreclosure.
yes, it was genius. It was genius. It seemed crazy to start with, but I've been in that building numerous times. It's great. They've outfitted it. It's a perfect building. It's great.
Yeah.
Um, but the idea is that there's still stuff to pay for, and people tend to give better when they come to the building and put the money in, put the money in
Yeah.
the plate, as opposed to all the things that are available.
And like I said, that's, yeah.
My little church is using Apple Pay and Zelle.
Yeah.
I used Zelle for the first time the other day to give in an offering. Uh,
Yeah.
so
That's I look at the Catholic Church. The Vatican literally is a nation state,
yes,
and they have a little bit deeper pockets that go back a little bit longer than just the 500 years.
yeah, they could probably float. They could probably float this for a bit, I'm guessing.
Yeah.
Um, so yes, finances are part of it, especially in the small and medium-sized churches. Finances have to be a part of it, because the idea is that people give more if they're there in the moment, as
Yeah.
opposed to, yeah, we have Apple Pay and Zelle, but what my wife's going to do earlier, she's going to call pastor's wife and give her the debit card number, and then we'll make our giving that way.
Yeah.
Because we know that we're going to, this will be over in a little bit, and we want to have a church to go back to. We know
Yeah.
that.
And that's the thing is people
We
that are able to
understand there's money that needs to be spent.
Yeah.
So yeah, so all of this, when we start to come out of it on a local level,
Yeah.
we've seen how we've gotten to the point we are here on a local level. One of my concerns, because I don't fear, but one of my concerns is who's going to grab the reins of coming out of this on a local level? Who's going to grab the reins and go, this is how we're coming out, this is how we're directing it? Or is it just gonna be me and you to decide, you know what, let's get 8 of our friends together and go over to I'm gonna get 9 of my friends and go over to Vinny's, and we're gonna have dinner because he grows some of his own food and it'll be cool.
Yeah.
I'll bring my flute. Somebody, you've got some friends who play guitar, I'll bring my flute. It'll be fun. Is it going to be that? Or is
Yeah.
it going to be directed from City Hall or county center?
I don't know. I really don't know right now.
That was a well-crafted question to get. I don't know.
Yeah. Sorry, Willie. It's funny on a federal level, all of a sudden the president's in favor of his authority to open everything up at once. All of a sudden, he has authority.
Trump goes completely away 10th Amendment, and then California's acting all states' rights over there. We'll do what we want to do.
Yep.
What the hell?
I think we're learning. Well, we haven't funded civics well in the last 20 or 30 years, and it's showing now. Like we're going to the school of hard knocks as a country.
Oh my God.
10 years ago, we learned financial literacy. 8 years ago, over the last 2 presidential cycles, we've learned about the Electoral College. We're starting to learn, that state legislatures are important in our lives. We're starting to learn county and city government is important. And we're just learning another lesson now. We're learning about states' rights versus federal. I don't know, because I don't see a coherent message coming out of the White House. Like, I don't see a federal cohesive message that's going to be comforting in any way. And then I also don't see this, different states are going to do different ways. I think Governor Cuomo in New York, for being as hard hit as New York is, he has kept a level head and dealt with facts and data as much as possible throughout this thing. So I think they're going to handle it differently than, say, Florida, where, even though, numbers are relatively low, DeSantis is being criticized for how he's handled it. I think, and then you throw in the politics. I had thought a few weeks ago when the safer at home thing came up and Les Miller was pushing for, it was like the county was, it looked like Les was pushing for a curfew and butting heads with the mayor who wanted safer at home. That's what I thought. I thought this is kind of a little bit of a pissing match because you've got one long-term Democrat. That Les Miller's gone from, he was in the House, the state Senate, county commission. He's been around a long time.
Two 8-year times in the county commission.
2 8 years now in the county.
Yes.
Was he there early on?
Yes.
Oh,
This
so
is
he's
his
come.
second. This
that
is
was
his
long
second.
before.
This is his second eight years in county commission.
Plus state legislature.
Yeah, I tried.
I didn't realize he was in office before that. I hadn't looked back that far. But so you take somebody with that much long-term experience, and I thought he was getting into kind of a pissing competition with the mayor. Because now you have first-time elected official, Democrat prominent as the mayor of Tampa, and there's always conflict between that. That was my initial thought, was this was a conflict between city and county and two prominent Democrats who could potentially run for governor. And I don't know how that plays out, because my thought on it is if Hillsborough County's numbers are exceptionally low compared to anywhere else in the state, especially Miami, Fort Lauderdale, and Orlando, et cetera, then that puts Jane Castor and or Les Miller, but most likely Jane, if she keeps the spotlight on Tampa and herself, in a very good position to run against DeSantis. So I think we have a lot of politics going on in these decisions right now.
No doubt.
Here's the thing is, I live in Pinellas half the time. There's no curfew there. You know, I'm only in Tampa today because I have to water my plants at least once a week.
Well, yeah. So you're gonna head out about 8:30, get over there, and then run around all night.
It only takes 15 minutes to get to the border on the bridge. It's the first time that sign ever meant anything since long distance charges.
Yes, and you know what? I remember where 727 was long distance call. Actually, I remember times where it was more distance to call St. Pete than it was to call New York.
Yeah, it was 25 cents a call.
Yeah, it was crazy. It's going to be very interesting. I really think it's going to be more the way that you mentioned before, Vinny. I think it's going to be that a lot of us are just going to ease ourselves back into our regular lives. And I don't think it's going to be in a come arrest me, I'm going to put this on Facebook Live thing. I think we're just going to go,
yeah.
How's everybody doing? Everybody's good. So you're good to all this? Yeah, I was able to still work. Okay, good. Listen, why don't you just come over to the house?
Yeah.
What are you gonna do? We're gonna grill some zucchini and hang out and listen to music for a bit. We're just gonna ease back into our lives.
Yeah.
I think you're right.
I think that's kind of the direction as well, because we're gonna take lessons. Some coherence is going to come out, and some people are going to pipe up as leaders. I would really love to see because here's the thing. Here's where I feel bad, because I do have some healthcare workers that I know that are overworked. That is a truth. Mm-hmm. And the thing is we've been overworking them for 3 decades. Like, this is not, so for some of them, it's no worse than it has been, except now you have this potential of contracting COVID. I really wish some libertarian with a lot of money would fund a capacity study that gave us all good numbers on where different hospitals were for capacity. Because I want to know, if Hillsborough County is only running at 50% of capacity right now, then I'm not worried about the curfew and lockdown as much. If Hillsborough County is running at 80% capacity, maybe we've got more problems. But, and those are the kind of things, this is long-term. It's not going to go away in 90 days. So we need to know our hospital capacities, and we need to adjust gatherings accordingly. I had a friend yesterday I was talking to, and colleges may go back in the fall, but will there be a college football season?
Oh my God, I hope so. I need a college. If there's been a year that I needed a college football season,
this would be it.
This would be the one. I'm mad at my school for getting rid of the coach I like and all that stuff. But you know what? I need a football season, something fierce.
Yeah, well, they're not going to fill stadiums, that's for sure. Even with regulations, the people aren't going to trust it yet. That's not, that's not
Not
going to
right
happen.
away. No, not right away. That is exactly true. I think that'll be an easing back too. I think that we're going to start looking at some of our regular. We say this in my house every day. Some of the regular habits that we never thought about: going to the grocery store, grabbing the cart, and just going through the Piggly Wiggly. It's
Yeah.
something that we won't do in that way anymore. That
Yeah.
that when you go into the grocery store, you're going to be looking for a little hand sanitizer wipe for the thing. I never did that. I would just grab the cart.
I
I never.
still don't.
You know what, and and just off of the Piggly Wiggly, I went. I think going forward, I will probably be looking for the little hand sanitizer and doing at least that. I don't think I'll be coming home every time from the Winn-Dixie and delousing in the front yard.
No.
But I think there will be little adjustments in my daily move around around the universe that I may make an adjustment to. And I probably should have done that all along. And what we're finding out is that we probably should have done some of these things all along.
Yeah.
And I think that will be the adjustment. I think we will get back to, going to the football stadiums, going to the baseball park. I think that it won't be a flip of a switch. They're not going to, what Cuomo's not going to say, we're all good in New York, and then they're going to fill up Yankee Stadium again. That's not going to happen like that.
No.
But I think people will trust. Again, once they start seeing the numbers, once their own experiences show that people around them aren't sick, once they start seeing it, then people will start buying into that things are okay again.
Yeah.
And that will just take a while. There won't be a flipping of the switch. It'll be more of a slider on a mixer as opposed to a switch on a wall. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Where you crank it up a little bit. Sliding, potentiometer. That knob as opposed to a switch. As we move forward. All right, man. Listen, I got to go teach.
All right.
The kids are going to be knocking at my virtual door any moment now. And I'll be spreading the love and joy of music virtually. And I've not
I hope there is a renaissance in small artistic exposure and gatherings in art. We don't need, I always look at the internet and what's that app? Not app, it was a website back in the day. Napster.
What
Napster did to the music industry is I know more individuals that make a modest but steady living as musicians today. And I would like to see more painters, sculptors, craftsmen, all sorts of things that we've lost in the last century of mass production. We don't need to fill super megaplexes of moviegoers, or just, big theaters, like local theater, local concert, local music, all these things. And, how do we get back to that? And I'm hoping, again, with this slowdown, that's something that comes out of this. I posted something on Facebook probably a month or two ago, or in sometime recent, some part, but, in the future, we will have, half the population could be in the arts. And this may be a pause that pushes us that direction, because who wants to go into finance or banking or something if you can go into music, if you can go into art, if you can go into theater?
I mean, and that's the reason I'm not a doctor. Too much math and chemistry.
So keep teaching and keep sharing music, man. I wish I could pick it up.
Oh, sure you can, man. I can teach anybody.
Yeah.
Those two things have to go together. You have to have that teaching thing, and you have to have a little bit of the music thing. So
yeah. Well, I appreciate it.
No worries, my man. Listen. Tell everybody that that I know that I said hello, and stay safe. And if you're gonna break curfew, get out of here before 9 o'clock, man.
Will do.
Be well. Thanks again, Vinny. All right. See you. Peace.
This pandemic, Dr. Lockwood has been our scientific and clinical thought leader in our understanding, our estimating, and our planning treatment for individuals with the virus. We simply could not have a more insightful and capable physician leading the university's medical strategy for tackling this virus. Charlie, over to you.
Well, thank you. That's really much too kind, and it really is my great privilege to lead a great group of physicians and nurses and other healthcare providers that are doing an amazing job, and so kudos to them. So just to give you kind of a little bit of a background, most of what I'm going to say, I think, is a lot more positive than I would have said a week ago. So Florida right now has about 16,000 cases. We have about 2,100 hospitalizations, and unfortunately we've had about 354 deaths. So that's all the bad news. The good news is that, in fact, the rate of increase of cases in Florida has been much less than we expected. It's linear, not logarithmic. We're increasing at about 7% a day in each of those categories, which is much less than up north for sure, and most of the country, in fact. Our best projections suggest that in Florida, our cases peaked on April 3rd. In Hillsborough County, they peaked on the 1st. So that's really good. The bad news is that hospitalizations and deaths are lagging indicators. And so we expect that the peak in hospitalizations will occur around 10 days from today, which is pretty close to what the University of Washington estimate was, which suggests that we'd have peak resource utilization around April 21st. So it's pretty accurate, we think. Maybe a little bit more conservative than what we're projecting. And certainly in Hillsborough will be even earlier and with much lower amplitude to that famous curve you hear about we're trying to flatten. So that's good news. As we look at the Tampa Bay area and we look at Hillsborough County, Pinellas, Sarasota, and Manatee counties, they have been relatively unaffected compared to, unfortunately, Miami-Dade, Broward, and Palm Beach, which account for about 60% of hospitalizations, 60% of deaths, and about 60% of cases in Florida. So our rate of increase in Hillsborough County has been particularly slow, given the size of the county. And we attribute a lot of that to the excellent approach that has been taken by our mayor and our county commissioners with their stay-at-home policies and an incredible compliance with that by the folks in this community. We've also benefited from a couple of other factors. We don't have mass transit, which is usually a source of complaint, but this particular situation helped us. And we don't have the vertical population density of places like Miami. The other thing that's helped us is our cases tend to be much younger. The average age of cases in Hillsborough County is 44, which explains why we have had such low hospitalizations and relatively low numbers of deaths. Our mortality rate is amongst the lowest in the country per case. Now it gets a little dicier as you go to Pinellas, Manatee, and Sarasota. The age keeps increasing. In the case of Pinellas, it's 52 is the average age of cases, 57 for Manatee, and 65 for Sarasota. And so their percentage of hospitalizations is higher, and unfortunately, the percentage of deaths is higher as a result. But they're still relatively low compared to the rest of the state. So that's all very good. We will not exceed the available beds, ICUs, or ventilators in any of these counties, particularly in Hillsborough. And in fact, the census at Tampa General and Baycare has been dropping all week. Right now, TGH, as of about 4 minutes ago, had only 8 admissions, and of those, only 1 was on a ventilator. So that's much better than even a week ago. And we see that really across the 4 counties. So that's all really good news. And it suggests that the curve has been flattened. It's also been kind of moved to the left so that the peaks are occurring earlier than we anticipated. And so in general, we're quite excited about that. Now, the question is, when do we get back to normal? And if I knew the answer to that, I would be a regular on CNN probably. But we're beginning to get a good strategy together about how to get back to normal. And the first is the availability of antibody testing. So the current testing tests for the presence of the viral RNA. This is an RNA virus, and it tells you that you are likely to be actively infected. It doesn't tell you if it's negative that you didn't already have the infection or better and have antibodies. And so by being able to do antibody testing, we'll identify the significant number of folks that have not been tested and have been infected and are now better. And that's the first tranche of folks that can go back to work. And we don't know the exact number. In China, up to 85% of cases were undocumented. Based on data from Iceland and Germany and nations that have done much better job than we have with testing, we think that at least 50% of cases are asymptomatic. In this country, we've only been testing the sickest patients, the most vulnerable patients, hospitalized patients, and so we have significantly underestimated the number of cases. So there's likely a big population that has been infected, particularly among younger folks, that have had no symptoms or mild symptoms. And when we can confirm that they're immune, we can get them back to work. And that can start in the next couple of weeks. We've actually ordered kits already for USF Health and Tampa General, and we'll be starting testing next week. We've got to validate that having the antibodies is confirmation you truly are immune and that you're not expressing the virus. We'll work through all those studies the next week or two. But starting in a couple of weeks, we think we'll have enough confidence in these antibody tests that once you're tested, if you're positive and you're not expressing the virus, you can go back to work. So that's going to be the first group that goes back to work. And they're immune, they can't get reinfected, and they won't infect anyone else. The second group, as we get the famous R value, which is the number of folks that an infected person infects, well less than 1, which we're pretty close to. We actually think we are there, certainly in Hillsborough County. As that number gets smaller and smaller, and we can begin to move back to containment and contact tracing and really be sure we've identified all the cases and their contacts and the virus isn't spreading, then we can get those folks that are young and at low risk, under 65, no comorbidities, back to work. Now, they should continue social distancing and they should wear face masks in public, and they should definitely wash their hands frequently and use hand sanitizers, but they can go back to work. And then the final group will be the vulnerable group, 65 or with comorbidities, and the infections have to be rare for them to return to work. So we're looking at folks that are immune going back to work in the next couple of weeks to next month or so. The next group probably in about 6 to 8 weeks, the non-immune, low-risk patients, and then finally the vulnerable group probably in 8 to 10 weeks. And those numbers keep getting better as we look at where we are in this epidemic. So lots of, I think, good news, but for now, for the next month at least, continue your social distancing, continue frequent hand washing for at least 20 seconds with soap and warm water, sing happy birthday to me twice, that's 20 seconds. Use hand sanitizer, particularly when you're out in public. When you go to buy products, wipe them down with a disinfectant solution. So if you go to Publix or you go to a supermarket, wipe down those cartons before you open up any of the food. And it is important to maintain that respiratory hygiene in public. So when you're in a supermarket or the pharmacy, make sure you use a face cover. That is actually more to protect other people from you, because you may be infected and not know it. Remember, at least half of folks are asymptomatic. It's not so clear that it's actually protecting you, but it probably does that a little bit too. So I think that's pretty much what I wanted to tell you. Much more optimistic than I was a week ago. I think we have a clear strategy for getting back to work. We are going to be watching carefully in the fall for recurrence of the epidemic, but we'll be in much better shape from a public health standpoint. We'll have many more tests available to identify folks that are infected. We'll have a lot more medications. We're starting 12 separate clinical trials right now at Tampa General with our physicians. Our problem is a good problem. We don't have enough cases to enroll patients, and that's a really good problem to have. So with that, I'm going to turn things over to our wonderful provost, who can give you a sense of all the amazing things that he and his team have done to move us online and allow us to be able to continue our educational programs in a safe way. Ralph?
Thank you, Dr.